G'day guys, sorry I'm late uploading this. Canberra Cup Day yesterday sort of got in the way, and I apparently didn't even upload last week's at all. So good effort, but I'll try and get back and put that one up as well. What do we have? 11th of March, so it was Coolmore Classic Day, I'm going to call it. I think it was probably the highlight race of the day. Definitely up the inside was an advantage. You wanted to sort of be rails in run or close to the fence. The track was pretty fast. It was faster around the circle, so the shoot races played a little bit softer, the track-wise, and is super fast around the circle. So I think around the circle fence in run and saving ground in run was even more important than it was sort of in the 11 and 1200 metre shoot races. And that's kind of how I've reviewed the meeting anyway. Fastest track, sort of on the better side of a 3, which they did upgrade the track to a 3. And the shoot was, probably spot on a 4. So that was kind of how the day played out. Let's get that straight into it. First race is a midway, 1200 metre midway. Nothing great to report here. Very average race. They go out pretty steady. They come home okay, but overall the race is pretty poor. Nothing great I could find to follow, to be honest. I think Lancaster Bombers sort of lurked around slightly easier races than the harder races than this. Very honest sort of horse. I call him honest but limited sort of horse. Hasn't won for a long time. When was the last time it won? It was the February 21. But coming to a 5-year-old plus, benchmark 72 here. It had been racing sort of 3-year-old pluses the whole way through. So that's all I can say is the first time it's dropped in grade slightly. It got the right run that it likes to get, that run where it can sort of just sit behind speed with cover and produce. So he's just found the perfect position. He's always had this sort of shortish dash, and back to this grade, he was just able to get away from it. The steero went okay down the middle of the track. That's it, coming down the middle. I thought border control wasn't bad. I'll sort of go back. You see, they're getting home okay here. It's probably the best part of the race, but nothing too exciting. We'll go through them more. I thought border control was a bit unlucky. Sort of held a spot early that was, midfield just off him and ended up getting shuffled back to sort of third last. Does get a nice enough run through, but still, that shuffling just cost it some momentum and position in run. But still, as I sort of said, it's a pretty average race overall. Steero's okay. Border control was okay. Miss Kajiki was okay. Prince Invincible was okay. Miss Einstein was okay first up. But, they're going to have to find a soft race to knock one over. Pretty average looking midway to start the day. And as I said, there's nothing too exciting I could find there. Race 2, Pago Stakes. Important race to have a look at. Important race to analyse with the slipper coming up this weekend, and Shinzo now forcing its way into the field. Ryan Moore is going to ride this horse. Obviously negative out of the gates. They just wanted to sort of take that wide gate out of play and ride it back towards the end of the field. It was probably one of the most dominant wins of the day, considering the position in run it gets. They went out pretty quick, I think. Hang on, sorry. Turn the page, John. They went out, sort of above average to the 800, picked it up a little bit, and then really average coming home. Very poor, to be fair, coming home last 600. So it makes sense that this horse could make ground. It was one of the few horses to make ground from out the back. And it sort of does it pretty quickly. Once he presses the button and comes wide here, he moves into the race very quickly. So that's a good sign. But the tempo of the race certainly did help. And whilst dominant, is this form strong enough for a slipper? I'd say probably not. But from a sort of clean out perspective and preparation, it's not too bad. He's done while they're doing work, he's out the back doing none. And when they've slowed down, he's sort of circled them and won. The whole run down the outside by Godzilla was okay, but again, flattered by the tempo. I didn't mind the run of bases loaded. Thought it sort of got keyed in the run, and I think once it sort of gets to 1400 and dictates, it'll be hard to beat. Probably not at the top level, but the level below. Zulfikar was fine, but Mahaba was fine, but every conceivable chance they're up there on the inside. Sort of whacked away. Zulfikar, I think, goes for a spell. It's in the Godolphin Blue. Introducing was very good, I thought, sort of up on speed, second start in the race, 1,000 to 1,200 metres. Thought it did a good job. The two Waterhouse horses did a good job. Mahab did a decent job. And Godzilla finished off quite nicely that last part there. I think it ran a pretty solid section. Sorry. Not really. It ran a decent section. Ran the fastest last 200 of the race, but that wasn't too exciting on the day overall. As I said, that last section was pretty average. So overall, a pretty average race. I think most of these horses are going to have to go back in grade to win, and can Shinzo line up and win a Gold Slipper? It would surprise me, to be honest. But the barrier draw will be out this morning, so we will know more. Race 3. So the Mighty Moutai stepping up to 1350 here for the first time. A bit lucky to get the run that it gets. For whatever reason, they were really keen to boot Raduna out of the gates and set up, only an average tempo. So it wasn't as if they went way too fast here, but it helped them bust up a little bit. Moutai slots in behind the leader. He won with that similar run with Bowman one day, and it sort of does seem to suit this horse. He definitely looks to be finally learning. Tamerlane sits outside leader. Fine 0.11. Dynamic Impact back on the inside there, and narrated, is it? First up for new trainer. That's not narrated, is it? Attracted back on the outside. So everyone gets their chance here. They go pretty steady, come home quite nicely. And surprisingly, Moutai just builds and runs the sort of 9th fastest last 800, 8th fastest last 600, 7th fastest last 400, 4th fastest last 200 in the day. Getting up to this sort of distance range after it sort of loomed and peaked and was beaten over shorter last time. So good signs for Moutai going forward. This sort of adds a few strings to his bow that we probably weren't aware of. And, very important because he was sort of starting to look like he was going up and down the one spot in the same grade. He was trying hard, but not getting it done in the same grade. So this certainly adds strings to his bow and cannot knock him at all. If he can continue to box seat and conserve his energy and have a finish like that left on him, he's going to win more races. So a solid tick for Moutai. Tamerlane, every chance, sort of returned in the same fashion you'd expect, just a tradesman. Fine point the same. I think they're both probably getting close to their limit class-wise, and what you see is what you get there. Raduna the same. Dynamic Impact probably needs a fresh, and I think these are just a really good fresh horse and over shorter. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what we see from Dynamic Impact. I wouldn't want to see it freshen up. Magic Night Stakes. The tale of this story was probably the barrier draw. We got Steel City drawn 1, Blanc de Blanc drawn 11, August Bloom drawn 12, and they were certainly the class runners over the rest. Others to talk about, probably Untouchable Legend was pretty good. Tiqui Sertuza looks like it's probably going to be better next time in. Fire Lane looks like it's finally got a bit tired in its prep, had the long, hard prep. But they took luck out of the equation here, which looks like it sort of surprised Timmy on Remedies. He sort of grabbed hold when Reggie's kicking up hard on the inside. On Steel City, they go slightly above average out. So, again, nothing too fast. Come home slightly below overall, pretty average race. Untouchable Legend's the one working up outside the leader. That's twice in a row now. This horse has been forced to sort of roll forward and end up outside a solid tempo. So another forgive run for Untouchable Legend, racing out of its grade here. Still a maiden. The leader certainly does a good job. Steel City, completely dominant, but does have a bit of cover. So a horse that's worked outside it, that's still a maiden. The one behind it, probably, this is as deep a class you want to see this horse in. Remedies is, I think, pretty limited too. Had to work a little bit early. Tiqui Sertuza, Fire Lane, all sort of dropping out. So he's had a really good buffer, is what I'm saying, between him and horses like Blanc to Blanc, who's back here, and August Bloom. So whilst he set a little bit above average tempo, these horses have sort of not had to do any work, but they've also been sort of forced back there because of the gate, or not forced back there, but they've been taken back there because of the gate. So saying is this is a bit of an illusionary buffer that he's had to they've had to overcome over its next best rival in the race, just the way it sort of turned out. So to me, that's what sort of where the 3-length winning margin comes from. And I'm not knocking the winner at all. It's done a good job. Not sure if it's best ridden that way or whether it is best with a bit of a sit, but certainly not knocking the horse. Does everything I want to see, as in doesn't really quicken here, but sustains the run and keeps that margin whilst the others just can't close off. Obviously had the pattern in its favour too. Blank to blank, tries hard. August Bloom's the horse I think that's a bit of a fresh horse on the scene when it comes to races like the size, possibly Champagne Stakes. I haven't checked to see whether it's nominated. I'm pretty sure it will be. Let me do that now. Because we saw that horse on Sunday come out. It was Gay's horse Win the Black Opal. It's not nominated for the size and the Golden Slipper. So interesting to see that. This horse is nominated for Slipper size and Percy Sykes. So wouldn't be surprised to see it go to the Percy Sykes. I don't think it gets into the Slipper. So and then the English size is very interesting. I think this horse can run a race in the size. August Bloom. What have I done there? Yeah, so Seal City runs in the Slipper. I think it certainly can be competitive. Probably needs to draw a gate. I don't think it's the ideal preparation. It's had a bit of tough racing now, but it's going to be there or thereabouts. Has been every start basically. I think Untouchable Legend, whether it's this prep or not, it's a nice horse. I think it's probably got to go back in grade to a maiden. It can knock over a maiden without much trouble. Blank to blank. Yeah, I'm not sure what to do with this prep. Maybe things haven't gone how they'd like from wide draws and things. This horse looks pretty tired there. They even tried really hard. August Bloom's just been handled a little bit softer, and I think it's going to have a little bit more in the tank, a little bit stronger through the line there. I think it's probably the one to follow out of that race, apart from Steel City, who will run, well enough in the Slipper, but whether there's enough left there or not, I'm not really sure. And there weren't too many sleepers. Shine Your Light, they just keep sort of aiming up a bit higher. Remedies, you see what you see is what you get. Hellbent on You wasn't too bad. 2 Quees on Tuesday, but that's sort of back in the field. They need to go back in grade, ideally. Race 5, Morris McCartan Stakes. They absolutely gift this race to Cannonball. He just, once he sort of works a little bit early, he's a little bit keen. I don't know why they didn't push the button on Thelric, but watching it, a few times over, maybe just a bit more intent shown from Cannonball, and that was enough to sort of hold them out. They go really slow here, so sort of 5-6 lengths below standard to the 600 after being 5 slow to the 800. So they slow down even from the 8 to the 6. You can see he's starting to get a bit keen, Cannonball. This stable sort of hasn't been sending too many of them to the races wound up. I know these stakes races are a bit different, so it's important to note that compared to sort of your run-of-the-mill races, they have these target horses usually closer to the mark. Thelric, every possible chance outside the lead. I thought Coal Crusher was pretty good because a really slow run, 1100, I didn't think would be ideal for it, but it stuck on quite well. Colino was just okay, probably needs that extra 100 metres. Quick Tempo ran the fastest last 6.42 of the day. You can expect that, 1,100 metre sprint race where they've gone out 5 below on a track that's really fast, that the 1,100 metre race is going to be the one where they zip home. So, Clemenceau ran the second fastest last 2.46. Dalcini, which is a horse that I love to hate to love, returned with the third fastest last 6.42, but sort of that negative pattern and racing in hard grade, it's a victim of its benchmark, to be honest. And whilst it certainly has returned well and run well there, and probably will be underestimated again next start, it's going to struggle to find the right race. But keep your eye on Dalcini. So it's a pass mark for Clemenceau. Quick Tempo again, as you said, sort of run the fastest 6.42. It's got to be kept to. It's got to have a jockey put on it and be kept to Randwick. I think that horse just so hard to overcome. The Rosehill sort of on-pace bias over 1,100 metres. So Cannonball completely handed the race, but has done a good job. They've come home quite quick. But as I sort of said, he's run the 43rd best time to the 200 metre mark for the day and only the 26th best time for the last 200. Decent last 600, but 11th fastest. But as you said, sort of the first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So only the fourth is missing from the fastest last 200s of the day have come out of this race. So it hasn't done a lot, Cannonball, and I'd be pretty tempted to be aggressively taking it on next time if there's more pressure and a bit deeper race. I think it's was certainly flattered by everything it could be there, tempo and conditions. Etheric being first up, sitting outside it, and effectively running cover as well. Just a race that doesn't look great, but overall, not a terrible. A win that looks flattered by the margin compared to the quality of the race is what I'd be concerned about. But some decent returns there. Coal Crusher off a little break. Clemenceau, Kalino, I think needs 1200. Quick Tempo just continues to run well. It's just his racing pattern that holds him back, but that is what he is. Next race was a similar story here. Pretty leisurely tempo from the 800 to the 800. They quick it up a little bit to the 6 and then zipped home. Okay, not like in quickish time, played right into the hands of Zugotcha, which is what everyone expected, and we got what expected. Doesn't always happen. One of the runs of the day here was Brosnan, wide back in the field, which not too many horses ran on from. They obviously come home pretty quick, and this horse just continued to build. I love this sort of 8th fastest the last 800, and still the 10th fastest the last 200 for a horse that doesn't have a great turn of foot. That's really solid sections this horse has run. So in comparison, Zugotcha's run the 4th fastest last 800 of the day, but 19th fastest last 200. So a horse it's more of a horse that has a turn of foot, but its obviously greatest capability is it can race closer to the speed. Brosnan's the grey that's out the back, as opposed to Glenna Silver, who's just been left alone. I'm not going to say it's flattered, but very hard fit horse that's had everything in its favour here, Glenna Silver, but is racing really well. Seems to have lifted its level, which is great to see. Always showed good ability early in its career and just couldn't get it done. Now they've worked out how to ride this horse, and it's really battling on nicely. Fireburn obviously forced to race a bit closer than it wanted to. Thought it kicked on just okay. Same for Daytona, a bit of restricted room in the straight, but still just okay. So Gotcha dominant, expected. You got Awesome John running on from in the black cap, white sleeves there. Brosnan down the outside with Madame Pomeroy, who sprinted really sharply, sort of 3rd fastest last 8-2 of the day, and then knocked up and is going to spell. So I'd imagine there was a little issue there. Hope she comes back in better order next time, because she is a very talented horse. Awesome John going up in distance, ticked another box for it. And the last 2 cut on a diamond, a lot more love. Didn't come into the race. Tempo was against them, but I think both of them are sort of struggling a touch, just listening to the post-race interviews. Where does Brosnan go? What sort of distance range does he need to get to in order to be super competitive? That's probably the second. Yeah, you would expect that as the distance rises, this horse is just going to continue to get better. As every run, he sort of found the line with really strong. So he's known for the Rosehill Guineas Derby, and that's exactly where you'd sort of expect him to go, the normal stepping stone for a horse like him. And it looks like he's going to be super competitive. I don't know what price he is. So another thing I probably should have checked. TAB.com.au. Futures. Where are you, Derby? Got a Rosehill Guineas market. They should, but have they? Rosehill Guineas market. Wow. What? $15 in the Rosehill Guineas. That seems okay. You've obviously got Pericles, Elliptical, those horses coming into it, Lindemann, Machalate, Virtuous Circle, Manzoy. So it's a pretty deep Rosehill Guineas, but $15 seems, fine. And then if we look at the Derby market, Australian Derby, yeah, $15 there. Sharp and Smart, $3 favourite. Yeah, not a horse of mine, but he's he got the better of me over the years, knocking him. Man's Voice is up there, $8, which is fair enough, but not had an ideal prep. Pericles, $8. Yeah, I think $15 is fair enough, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's obviously firmed up to, it was $26 and opened into $15. So Brosnan, an interesting horse when it comes to races like the Rosehill Guineas and Derby. Where does Ugocha go? Probably. That's an interesting question, but there's certainly plenty of options for a horse of her class in fillies and mares grade. Sky High, race 7. Even time, they go out above, they go out pretty quick, sort of steady it up by the 800, still above average to the 6, come home in very even time for a just above average race overall and a very even but strong tempo. So Knight's Order certainly doing a bit of work to get up out there, out wide. The interesting ride was Stockman. There was a change of tactics to be ridden closer to the tempo, but for this horse to sort of sit outside the leader and then apply the acid as well as early as it did and then stick on. Incredible run, but very strange from this stable who normally tend to sort of let horses progress naturally and conserve their energy until they get to their target races. They must have thought this horse needed a bit of this, a bit more sort of mongrel put into it, I guess is the best way to put it. So he's ridden up on speed. He attacks the leader, who's a sort of free-running horse in front anyway, and puts a bit of pressure into the race. And quite interesting. Protagonist lobs the 1-1. James McDonald, really great ride. Zarek was the shattering run for my day. I think they put up silly price of $21, $17, something like that for this race. And it was my Hail Mary go for the week in early multis messing around. So had it going for a good result here, and it does look the winner. After Sunshine Rising looks the winner. So the two in the middle, in the back sort of section here. So Sunshine Rising's on the outside in these purpley colours, and Zarex on the back of it, no compromise. Here, King Frankel, Protagonist, Stockman, Knight's Order. I think they were the better runs in the race. Benno was very average yet again. No compromise, did pull up with an issue, and this is Allegron and Normandy Bridge, who sort of got wound up late. I'll talk about them in a minute. Protagonist, every possible chance, hits the front really early, first up from a spell, so you can't knock it. Great ride, good solid win. Zarek just looked the winner 35 times, refused to go past the winner, raced a bit green the straight. Sunshine Rising looms up like it's just going to put them away, but it just sort of didn't run the 2,000 out. Super strong. Thought King Frankel battled away really well in behind. I thought these two battled away really well. So we got Sydney Cup horses here. I don't know about Sydney Cup I guess Protagonist would be on that sort of trail. Potentially, I haven't checked its noms either. And Zarek, the way it's racing, certainly up to that jump from, what was it, like 14 or 1600 straight to that race there. It might have even been 1400. It was a super win first up. It's absolutely flying, Zarek. So 14 to 2000 there. It's been to 2,600 metres before, so little doubt that it's probably on that sort of path as well, but check that for sure. Didn't hate the run of Allegron first up, and Normandy Bridge had a really long break and 2 runs back that were average, 3rd run back. So it's cut home okay. But I think these horses are all on target for better races. Knight's Order, Stockman, Protagonist, King Frankel. Sunshine Rising probably has to drop back, maybe back to a Doncaster if it got in. That'd be interesting. And I think he could run well in a Doncaster, and Zarek can run well in pretty much whatever they target. The way he's going, he's absolutely flying. Coolmore Classic. What the hell was this run? This is one of the best runs I've ever seen. Pride of Jenny. So the start's very important here. Number 1. Expat misses it terribly, driven up to be behind the leader, out of play. Anavisto sits outside the leader. Its head basically blows off lame. I think 1 out of 5 or something. But regardless, set up on a brutal tempo. So they go about 10 lengths above here to the 800, step it up to the 600, even go quicker, and then, really poor last sections. But have to, they've gone out so quick, and the overall time's still fast, but you'd expected it to be off this tempo. So the run I've never seen a run like this, Pride of Jenny. I have, but this is an enormous run, Pride of Jenny. always everyone thinks it's a better horse ridden front running, so they've gone out with this. I laughed after the race when Robbie Dolan said we nearly pinched it. Well, you didn't nearly pinch it. Sorry, it is early morning and I'm struggling. You didn't nearly pinch it. You nearly blew everything else's heads off with your performance. So you've gone out 10 above and you're still there strong enough late compared to the rest. Huge effort. Last 200, none of them are fast. And it is sort of slowing slightly, but not as much as it should. Its run's huge here. It kicks on really well. Espiona lobs in that perfect spot midfield. The fence. She's a belter lobs perfect spot midfield, one off. No surprise to see them in the finish. So they're just close enough, but just far enough off a crazy tempo. Torregine's up there working quite hard behind the two leaders, one out, one back. Sort of think it's sort of one off for a fair portion of it. As you should have said, Expats worked hard to chase a ridiculous tempo after missing the start. It's had its chance. It's not had its chance. It finishes tailed off. So the horses that are sort of in the perfect spot here are the two closers, and yet this guy up here, this girl up here, has the audacity to kick on and try and hold them off when it comes to the end. You hope in your heart, as his tradesman, like for her, off the bit very early. No surprise here, off a really fast tempo, but she continues to sort of run on a little bit pace assisted, but she is what she is. Yearning finds the perfect place up the inside. So does Mustang Valley. So does more profits is back towards that sort of section. A little bit of a check for Yearning, but no excuses. No excuses for Mustang Valley. Here, I thought She's a Belter was going to pick them up, run away from it. The inside section, really quick, probably just the difference between the two. Rails in run. It's just, Miravision wasn't a bad run. It was the one that sort of raced just behind them and does get squeezed up here. Thought it was a huge improvement from its first up run, where it certainly presented a little bit with improvement to come and race that way, and it has improved significantly. So if it found a race next start where there weren't four leaders and it could sort of just settle on speed naturally, I think it can run a race for sure. I thought it was a really good effort, actually, Miravision. More profits, just probably needs it easier. Back last, obviously pace assisted, but it continues to run really well. Ruthless Dame and Hinge were okay. It's just a Mustang Valley and that are back towards the inside, which is the place that you needed to be. I thought Torregine kicked on okay, considering it never really travelled. It was up on a fast tempo, but the run that was ginormous was Pride of Jenny. These two were certainly helped by the tempo, and Espiona was helped by the inside. Race okay overall, and that gap behind sort of saves it from being a negative target, but certainly gifted a beautiful run in transit and everything possible to assist to get home, is how I'll put it. But the performance itself was, okay and quite dominant over the rest, except for Pride of Jenny, who was far and away the best run in this race. Will she still be lying down in her box trying to recover? Who knows? But if she can bounce off that run and find another race where she can dictate terms, yeah, she's back on track. 3 out of 5 lane Manavisto, as we sort of said. So there's a bit of takeaway from the on-speeders putting themselves into the ground, apart from Pride of Jenny. And again, that sort of takes away from the performances of Espiona and She's a Belter a little bit, but adds to Pride of Jenny's. So, yeah, just a huge run. And I feel sorry for anyone who didn't collect on her, because you deserve to. This was a personal tragedy. I'll have my little whinge. No change of tactics here. I just hate the rule. You look for them, because when there's patterns playing out on the day, you believe that if they're going to be ridden out of their normal pattern, that they're going to have to announce it. So when it comes to a race like this and they don't announce it, and all of a sudden a horse like Cepheus, who has been ridden back its whole career, so 9th of the turn last start, 11th of the turn last start, 10th of the turn the start before, 5th in settling, 2nd of the turn. This is last preparation in a 2,400 metre race. 4th of the turn in a 2,000 metre race. And then we go back 11th of the turn, 12th of the turn in this 1,500 metre race distance range, 8th of the turn in a 1,400. And then its previous career was in the UK. So this horse has never shown any early speed. It's never led in its life. Even in the UK, it hasn't. The closest it's been in the run is 3rd settling, 4th of the turn in a 2,000 metre race with only 7 runners. 5th of the turn in a 2,400 metre race with 12 runners. And then we see it sort of lead here after being 11th to the turn, 10th to the turn in weaker races in Doomben. Was over shorter distances, 12 to 13.50. Am I talking through my pocket? Absolutely. I took 50s first up, and it was a bit unlucky beating there. And then $7, $8, $9, $10, and $11 last start, where it looked like it was a certainty beat. These are races against horses like Animate, Irish Songs, the Big Goodbye. So a big class drop here, open to a Group 2, and they gifted it the race. Nash just controls it. Overall, it's a pretty poor race, to be fair. And is it a great ride? Absolutely it is. Am I bitching about the ride? Not. If I knew if there was a change of tactics, I would have been on the horse, because it was absolutely flying. But who would have thought in a million years, from gate 6, which was an awkward draw, sort of you map it sort of midfield wide, potentially having to be taken right back, and now he's up in front. And it's not as if he's sitting outside a horse that has got no speed in a session, who led comfortably last start. He sort of puts into the sword and takes over, and then just puts the brakes on. So they go out about 3 lengths, only about half a length slow to the 800, but then for whatever reason, Nash is still able to control the race even further and drop it back to 3 lengths below by the 600. So here is where he gets the huge breather that allows him to win the race. You can see his session's been forcibly restrained. You've got Caesar's Palace. There's some pretty average runs here, to be honest. Caesar's Palace, Riadini, Bandersnatch is a little bit unlucky. Sabark really one-paced. They're the main runners in the betting, apart from Waterford, who slipped out at the gates. Don't think it would have settled too much closer anyway. Obviously, they would have intended to, but I don't think it made a huge difference. Horse that sort of settles back, but was used up a touch, but not really. You can see it wasn't as if it given its head and ended up in a nice spot on the back of Sabark. Anyway, I thought it had its chance. Well was quite good. Late Diamond, a complete forgive. Thought it was given a barrier trial, and Superium doesn't run the 1500. So overall, it's a poor race. This horse in front absolutely gifted everything it possibly could. It did nothing at any stage. So they've run home below average. It's a really poor race against the clock. Riadini looked the winner. Sabark looked the winner. Waterford presents the winner and peaks. They all peak. A session, I think, no abnormalities, but basically dropped out. So huge warning signs to this race. You got Caesar's Palace in behind on the fast rail that sort of flattered into third. Hard fit and racing well, but very average, honest but limited horse. That's the way I like to put it. Sort of Bandersnatch was a little bit unlucky, but I didn't think it was hugely unlucky. You got Wall running the fastest last section of the race down the outside here for the Waller camp, maybe back on track. But huge warning signs, and Diamond sort of just camping in behind here and not doing a lot and poking around. I thought it was pretty smelly, Diamond, that it could improve significantly. It's an interesting horse for sure. But coming out of an average race, not always a bad thing when you're looking to back a horse next start. You can just see sort of looks like it's got reserves of energy to me, and I think this horse can improve significantly with a better draw and a different race next time. But Cepheus is just taking advantage of everything here. Clearly flattered in a poor race. When you say ridden upside down, they're still going slow, so it's only average. And a horse, that has got ability like him and is racing well, it certainly wasn't ridden upside down out of its comfort zone, is what I'm trying to say. Not hugely anyway. And that big slowdown from the 800 to the 600 certainly played right into his hands. He's able to sprint up a touch, and as I said, he sort of has never really done anything. His fastest section is his last. In comparison, it's sort of 13th fastest last 200 of the day. So good sign that he's racing really well, and the only reason I wouldn't be aggressively taking him on, but he certainly flattered from a pattern perspective, a tempo perspective, and horses around him failing again. So sort of a session not finishing the course. Riadini's been poor there. I thought it was entitled to do more, even though it's only second up. I thought Sabark was entitled to do more, even though it was only second up. And Waterford certainly peaked on its run late there after running a really solid section from the 6 to the 2 and the 4 to the 2. I thought it was pretty average late. So overall, very average race. The annoyance, the no change of tactics. I wish they'd just cast the rule so you can use intuition to try and guess what people will do, rather than relying that if they are going to make a change, they've got to let people know, which is the big problem for me. Lucky last is the 900 meter benchmark 78. They absolutely fly here. 15 above to the 800, 13 above to the 600, and come home 5 below. The sectionals in staying races to me I use more as a guide. It's more a tempo thing of who's worked in the run or not. They do run some crazy figures, but you can imagine it's just a longer race. It's smaller changes in tempo over a longer period. They just run extreme fast and slow tempo. So Made by Khan absolutely rips along in front, crazy, but does hold on to third. So you've got to say that they probably used the right tactics, because I don't think this horse could have finished an inch closer. Almania, great ride, finds the fence from an awkward draw, and all important. Hadn't won for a long time, but was ready to win here. It was just the pattern that was the problem, and the tempo plus the ride sort of overcame that. Made by Khan, very good in front. As you should have said, the Father's Day outside the leader pops like a brick balloon, pulls up 1 out of 5 lane, but basically pulled out of the race quite early. Major Bill behind the leader, every possible chance. Stroke of Luck on its back, and Almania. So they're the three that have raced like Harold Park, you want to call it, like a trot race, 1, 2, 3 back the fence, or 2, 3, 4 back the fence in this case. And the only horse that doesn't come from fence is Marsabit, who's out there wide and trying to circle. Really poor ride, or huge run considering it was wide throughout. I think Danny Williams is back in play. I think he's back. His horses are racing really well. So Almania coming around the heels of the 4 horses in front, who were nowhere near as seasoned as Almania. So the ride, the tempo just brought it right into play. Thought they were both pretty good, all things considered. Major Bill and Stroke of Luck, did they have every chance? Absolutely, but they were sort of rising in distance and class a touch, and Made by Khan just a tough one pacer that maybe just went a bit too quick, but could it have finished much closer? Probably not. I think it would have always been out sprinted by the horses that sort of camped behind it, and it's just softened those up behind enough to finish as close as it could. Mon Felicity was pretty plain. Caboche was pretty plain. Wineglass Bay was back last, came to the middle, pretty plain. I thought Marsabit was certainly the better run. Horses to follow from the meeting, I didn't really find too many. I think they're all pretty obvious. Just sort of going through the fields. Nothing in the first, nothing in the second. Maltai, I think, is well and truly a horse to follow up around this distance range. He's proved that he can run it out, and he's added a string to his bow that I don't think anyone really was too aware of. August Bloom going towards the size, yes, but needs to draw a gate. All of the horses in race in the Morris McCartan have returned quite well. I think it's, if you use it as a barrier trial going forward, I don't think that's silly, as in a positive barrier trial for most of those horses. They can build off that. Brosnan was probably close to the run of the day in the far lap, but we'll find stiff competition in races like the Rosehill Guineas and Derby, so it's hard to make it a horse to follow with confidence. Say Rex absolutely flying. Don't know where they go with it, whether it stays at 2,000, whether it comes back to a mile, but it's absolutely flying. Zayrek, nothing out of the Coolmore with much confidence. Certainly nothing out of the Ajax and nothing out of the last. Yeah, so not a hugely eventful meeting, unfortunately, but it is what it is, and we'll be back next week trying to find a winner. Cheers, guys.